Most of our misery comes not from what life gives us, but from what we demand of it. We wish for straight lines in a world drawn with curves, for fixed rules in a game that constantly changes, for a future that can be calculated like a merchant's ledger. Yet life is not an account to be balanced, it is a voyage, and voyages are made of winds we cannot command. The man who insists on certainty walks with fear as his companion, for he is always bracing for the moment when reality departs from his plan. But the man who opens his hands to the unknown finds that the burden he carried was never life itself, but his resistance to it. When we embrace uncertainty, we are no longer dragged like prisoners by the chains of our expectations. We begin to move as a dancer moves, adjusting with each step, meeting each change with grace. Life becomes easier not because it stops presenting difficulties, but because we stop insisting that it conform to our will. If the river bends, we follow its curve instead of trying to straighten it. If the sky darkens, we adjust our course instead of cursing the clouds. I have found that certainty, though it feels like security, is often the heavier weight. It demands that the world remain still, that people never change, that fortune be forever in our favor. But the world will move, people will change, fortune will turn. When we see this as a betrayal, we suffer twice, once from the change itself, and again from our refusal to accept it. Yet when we expect uncertainty, we suffer less, for we do not see it as an enemy, but as the very nature of life. A man who accepts uncertainty is not paralyzed by the question, "What will happen to me?" For he knows the answer is always, "We shall see." He acts not because he has guarantees, but because the act itself is worth doing. He loves not because he is promised a lifetime, but because the moment itself is worthy of love. He takes risks not because he is blind to danger, but because life without risk is not truly lived. This acceptance does not mean laziness or fatalism. It means we prepare without worshiping our plans, and we hope without chaining our joy to a single outcome. We learn to stand as a tree stands, rooted, yet able to sway in the wind without breaking. And when life delivers surprises, we meet them with curiosity rather than panic. In this way, the uncertain road becomes not a punishment, but an adventure. The easiest life is not the one where all is known in advance, but the one where the unknown is no longer feared. Certainty may soothe the mind for a while, but uncertainty strengthens the soul forever. We cling to certainty because it seems to offer safety, yet it is often nothing more than a fragile illusion. We imagine that if we can map out every turn in the road, if we can anticipate each outcome, then we will walk without fear. But the truth is that the world owes us no fixed patterns, and the moment we believe it does, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Life's nature is movement, change, flux like the sea, that never holds the same shape for more than an instant. To seek certainty in such a world is to demand that the tide obey your command, a demand that will leave you exhausted and bitter when it is ignored. The burden of certainty is that it forces us to fight reality at every step. When things go according to our plan, we feel a temporary relief, but when they do not as they inevitably will, we feel betrayed. We forget that the betrayal exists only in our mind, for the world never promised to stand still. The man who expects certainty is like a traveler who believes the weather will always be calm. When the storm comes, he is shocked, unprepared, and resentful. The wiser traveler packs for both sunshine and rain, knowing that neither will last forever. There is a subtle arrogance in our desire for certainty, as though the universe should align itself to our timetable and desires. But the river does not change its course because we demand it, and the seasons do not alter their pace for our convenience. The man who understands this truth begins to loosen his grip, not out of despair, but out of alignment with the deeper rhythm of life. He sees that uncertainty is not a defect in the design, but the design itself, and in seeing this, he is freed from the exhausting labor of trying to control the uncontrollable. When certainty becomes our God, we live in fear of its absence. We hesitate to act unless the outcome is guaranteed, and in doing so, we forfeit countless opportunities. But when we release this need, we begin to act for the sake of the act itself. We pursue learning, relationships, and dreams without demanding that they last forever or unfold exactly as we imagine. This is not recklessness. It is trust in the fundamental truth that life's beauty lies in its impermanence. Just as a flower is precious because it will fade, a moment is meaningful because it cannot be repeated. To embrace uncertainty is to return to the present, where life actually happens, rather than in the imagined future where our plans sit gathering dust. Certainty may offer comfort, but uncertainty offers freedom, and it is in that freedom that life stops being a prison and becomes a vast, open sea, waiting to be explored. Fear is the natural companion of uncertainty, yet it is often the fear itself, not the unknown, that paralyzes us. We imagine the worst outcomes, rehearsing disasters in our minds until they seem inevitable, and in doing so we suffer twice, once in anticipation and once, perhaps, in reality. This is the mind's trick. It convinces us that by fearing the unknown, we are somehow preparing for it, when in truth we are only wearing ourselves down before the moment even arrives. Fear narrows our vision. It causes us to cling to the familiar, even when the familiar is stagnant or harmful, because the unfamiliar appears more dangerous simply by virtue of being unknown. But Michel de Montaigne understood that the unknown is not the enemy. Our attachment to imagined certainties is. Fear grows strongest when we believe we must know everything in advance, for the absence of complete knowledge feels like a threat. The antidote is not to force ourselves into false confidence, but to accept that life has always been uncertain, and yet we have navigated it before, often without realizing it. Think of the countless moments you have faced without a script. The first time you spoke in front of others, the first time you traveled to an unfamiliar place, the first time you confessed your feelings or made a difficult decision. In those moments, fear whispered to you, but still you acted, and only afterward did you see that the unknown was not as monstrous as you had imagined. Fear loses its grip when we learn to step into uncertainty without demanding guarantees. We begin to see each unknown not as a void filled with threats, but as a space in which anything is possible. Failure, yes, but also growth, surprise, and joy. The fear does not vanish entirely, it transforms. It becomes a signal not of danger, but of potential, a reminder that we are alive and moving into new territory. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to act in its presence. And when we repeatedly choose to act despite fear, we discover a strange truth. Uncertainty itself becomes less frightening. We stop needing every path lit before we take the first step. We stop demanding that the future fit neatly into our expectations. Instead, we begin to walk with the understanding that whatever lies ahead, we will find a way through it. And in this, life becomes lighter, not because it is safer, but because we are no longer burdened by the constant need to be certain. Control is the most seductive illusion we cling to, yet it is also the one that most quietly destroys our peace. We like to believe that with enough planning, enough vigilance, enough sheer force of will, we can bend life into a shape that pleases us. We draw maps of the future, thinking they will guarantee our arrival at the desired destination, forgetting that the terrain is always shifting beneath our feet. The truth is that much of what we call control is nothing more than a fragile arrangement of circumstances that could change at any moment, an arrangement dependent not only on our actions, but on the countless invisible forces that shape reality. We cannot control the weather, the economy, the minds of others, or the sudden twists of fate. And yet, we exhaust ourselves as if these things could be held in our grasp, growing frustrated when they inevitably slip away. The more we try to control what lies outside us, the more anxious and brittle we become. For the world is an endless tide, and we are attempting to hold it still with our bare hands. Michel de Montaigne would remind us that the only true domain of control is within ourselves, our choices, our attitudes, our interpretations. And even here, mastery is a lifelong task, for the human heart is fickle, and the mind is often swayed by fears, desires, and illusions. To accept that life cannot be fully controlled is not defeat. It is liberation. When we relinquish the need to orchestrate every outcome, we open ourselves to the possibility that life might surprise us with gifts we never thought to request. We stop resisting the flow of events and begin to move with it, adjusting as we go, like a sailor reading the wind rather than cursing it. This does not mean surrendering to passivity. It means recognizing that influence is far more valuable than control. Influence comes from understanding the forces at play, aligning with them where possible, and adapting when they shift. It is a dance rather than a battle, and those who master it live with far less strain than those who fight endlessly against what they cannot change. The irony is that when we stop trying to control everything, we often gain more power, not over events themselves, but over how we navigate them. We become steadier in the face of chaos, less reactive to sudden changes, more capable of seeing opportunities hidden in disorder. The man who clings to control is fragile, for the loss of it shatters him. The man who embraces uncertainty is resilient, for he has already made peace with the truth that nothing is truly his to command except himself. And in that truth, he finds a freedom that no amount of control could ever offer. Adaptability is the quiet strength that transforms uncertainty from a source of fear into a source of opportunity. Many people see change as a threat because they have built their sense of security on the belief that life should remain as it is. They cling to routines, to fixed ideas, to familiar structures, and when these inevitably shift, they feel as though the ground has been pulled out from beneath them. But the one who understands life's true nature knows that change is not an interruption. It is the constant. To resist it is to resist reality itself, and reality always wins. Michel de Montaigne would tell us that adaptability is not simply a matter of survival. It is a mark of wisdom. It means recognizing that your plans are not sacred, your expectations are not law, and your identity is not a finished sculpture, but a work in progress. It means learning to bend without breaking, to adjust your course when the wind changes rather than stubbornly rowing against the current until you exhaust yourself. Adaptability is born from humility, the acceptance that we do not know everything, and that our perspective may need to shift as life reveals new information. It is also born from trust in our own capacity to respond to whatever happens, even when the shape of it is still unknown. The adaptable person does not fear the loss of the familiar because they have not rooted their worth or happiness in fixed conditions. They are anchored instead in their own resourcefulness, their ability to think, to feel, to act in alignment with the moment rather than in defiance of it. This is why those who embrace adaptability often find that life feels lighter. They no longer carry the burden of forcing things to be what they once were. Instead, they treat each change as an invitation, sometimes to grow, sometimes to let go, sometimes to begin again. In this way, uncertainty becomes not a wall to crash against, but a doorway to walk through, and here lies the deeper beauty. Adaptability does not just help us endure the changes we cannot control, it allows us to find meaning within them. We begin to see that the unexpected is not always the enemy, it is often the teacher. A failed plan can lead to a better one. A closed door can lead to a wider horizon. Those who are adaptable discover that while life may not unfold as they imagined, it can still unfold in ways that are rich, surprising, and deeply fulfilling. They understand that the art of living is not in making the world obey your will, but in learning to dance with it, to shift your steps with the rhythm it plays, and in doing so, to move gracefully through even the most uncertain of times. Perspective is the lens through which uncertainty transforms from a source of torment into a source of possibility. Most suffering in uncertain times does not come from the events themselves, but from the meaning we attach to them. Two people can face the same unknown. One will see only danger and loss, the other will see an open field of potential. Michel de Montaigne understood that our interpretation of life's unpredictability shapes not only our emotions, but also our ability to act wisely. If you see uncertainty as an enemy, you will meet it with resistance, anxiety, and suspicion. You will spend your days trying to predict every outcome, only to be blindsided by what you could never have foreseen. But if you see uncertainty as the natural state of the world, you will meet it with curiosity, flexibility, and a readiness to learn. This is not mere optimism, it is a deliberate choice of perception, a discipline of the mind. Perspective grants you the ability to step back from your fears and ask, what else could this mean? What might be gained here that I do not yet see? It allows you to shift from asking, why is this happening to me, to what is this preparing me for? That small change in perspective turns obstacles into training grounds and losses into lessons. This mental shift is not about denying difficulty. It is about refusing to give it the final word. When you consciously shape your perspective, you reclaim your inner power because you no longer let the external world dictate your internal state. You begin to see that uncertainty is not always a void. It can be a space pregnant with possibility, waiting for you to step into it with awareness and intent. In this way, perspective is both shield and compass. It protects you from the paralysis of fear and points you toward purposeful action. Those who cultivate this inner lens find that uncertainty loses much of its sting. It becomes less of a shadow hanging over them and more of a canvas on which they can paint new paths. And here is the quiet secret. The world will always be uncertain, but your perspective is entirely yours to command. By shaping it deliberately, you ensure that life's unpredictability no longer robs you of peace, but instead sharpens your vision, deepens your resilience, and expands your horizon beyond what certainty could ever offer. Resilience is the inner fortress that allows you to stand when everything around you feels uncertain and unstable. It is not the absence of difficulty, but the refusal to be broken by it. Many people believe resilience is an inborn trait, something you either have or lack, but in truth, it is a skill forged through repeated encounters with life's unpredictability. Each time you face an unexpected twist and choose to rise rather than collapse, you strengthen this unseen muscle. Michel de Montaigne would remind us that resilience begins with the acceptance that life will not spare you from hardship. The storms will come, and no amount of planning will shield you from every blow. But what determines the quality of your life is not the size of the storm. It is the sturdiness of your spirit. Resilience is built on the quiet discipline of meeting adversity with patience rather than panic. It is the practice of saying, "This is not the end," even when your path seems obscured and your strength tested. It comes from having endured before and remembering that you are still here despite it. More than that, it is rooted in meaning. A resilient person does not merely endure. They find a reason to endure. Whether it is the love of someone dear, the pursuit of a worthy goal, or the commitment to live in alignment with one's values, meaning gives the mind a reason to keep moving forward when the body wants to give up. Resilience also requires a degree of self-trust, the belief that no matter how severe the uncertainty, you will find a way through, even if the route is unclear at the start. This trust is not arrogance. It is an earned confidence born from facing the unknown before and discovering you could navigate it. Those who cultivate resilience become less afraid of uncertainty because they have evidence that they can survive it. And as they survive, they grow, not in the absence of wounds, but often because of them. The beauty of resilience is that it transforms uncertainty from a threat into a test, one that shapes you into someone more capable, more grounded, and more alive. The world will always contain forces outside your control, but if your inner foundation is strong, no storm can truly destroy you. Instead, Each challenge becomes another stone in the fortress of your character, making you not just a survivor of uncertainty, but a master of it. Adaptability is the art of moving with life instead of against it, the ability to bend without breaking when faced with the shifting winds of uncertainty. Those who lack adaptability cling rigidly to a single path, a single plan, believing that security lies in sameness. But life, as Michel de Montaigne observed, is in constant flux. No 2 days, no 2 moments are ever identical. The person who refuses to adjust is like a sailor who insists the wind must match his chosen direction, even as the storm rages and the current pulls. Adaptability, on the other hand, is the wisdom of adjusting the sails, of changing course without losing sight of the destination. It is a mindset that values progress over pride, curiosity over control. To be adaptable is to acknowledge that you cannot dictate the conditions of the world, but you can decide how you respond to them. This requires both humility and courage. Humility to admit when your approach is not working, and courage to try something untested. Adaptability is not passive surrender. It is an active dance with reality, an ongoing recalibration in pursuit of what matters most. It allows you to seize opportunities hidden within the unexpected, to see not only what has been lost, but also what might be gained. Those who cultivate adaptability discover that uncertainty becomes less threatening and more like an open field, full of possible routes. They do not waste their energy cursing the change in weather. They use that energy to navigate it. And perhaps most importantly, adaptability keeps you alive in spirit, preventing the stagnation that comes from over-attachment to a single way of being. In this way, uncertainty ceases to be an enemy and becomes a partner, one that challenges you to remain awake, aware, and ready to move in whatever direction life demands. When you are adaptable, you are never truly trapped, for you carry within you the ability to adjust, to pivot, and to create new paths from the unknown. This is why the adaptable not only survive life's uncertainties, they often thrive because of them.